Bitcoiners are currently freaking out about XRP, which lets me know we're right around the corner from the next big move. In this video, we're going to take a look at the XRP price charts and take a look at exactly where we stand, as well as talk about a critical mistake that the Bitcoin maxis keep getting wrong. Like always, your support means so much to this channel. Thank you to everyone who takes the time to like these videos and subscribe to the channel. These two simple things really do help me out so much. Also, if you ever need a good place to buy some XRP, make sure to check out my favorite exchange Uphold down in the description of this video. With that said, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Let's jump right into it, and it's pretty funny because whenever XRP is about to make a big move or XRP is appreciating in price, you always see a lot of hate coming from the Bitcoin maxi side of the aisle. Now, personally, I actually am a really big fan of a lot of this hate, and I'll go over in this video why. But to start off, we had Mike Alfred the other day. He said XRP is an IQ test, and a lot of people are failing. And I said, this is accurate. You're absolutely right. A lot of people are failing the XRP IQ test because people like Mike Alfred are getting very emotional about XRP. Now, people like Mike Alfred, they constantly put out stuff like, if you invest in XRP, you're an idiot, or you were on drugs, or all these crazy things if you decide to hold XRP. But they fail to take into account that for the vast majority of XRP's history, it's actually been a better investment than Bitcoin, right? If we take a look at XRP's all-time chart against Bitcoin, we can see the vast majority of XRP's trading data is actually in the green. This means the vast majority of people since XRP was created who purchased XRP rather than Bitcoin made the correct decision in doing that. They were better off buying XRP than Bitcoin. Now, it's so funny to me when the Bitcoin maxis come out in arms about buying XRP because at the end of the day, it's not even like they have the numbers on their side. The vast majority of the time, people were better off purchasing XRP than Bitcoin if they were given the choice to buy one or the other. So that lets me know right off the bat that people like Mike Alfred are unfortunately coming from a very emotional argument. They're not coming from any facts. Not only have they been incorrect about the actual returns of investing in something like XRP over Bitcoin, but on top of that, they fail to even bring up anything related to XRP that's any kind of negative. Some of the main things they always throw out is that Ripple is dumping XRP, but the Bitcoin miners and early Bitcoin whales dump Bitcoin. You're always going to have a buyer and seller in every market. It doesn't really matter. That's structurally how markets work. It doesn't matter who's buying and who's selling. As long as there's more demand volume than sell volume, the asset's going to appreciate. Now, they constantly go around that and say, oh, well, because Ripple's selling, that's somehow a problem. But clearly it's not, because like we talked about earlier, the vast majority of the time you're better off buying XRP than Bitcoin. So that alone should prove that that argument's not valid. And when you bring everything back to the fundamental idea that so far since XRP has been in inception, it has outperformed Bitcoin to a large degree of its history, that alone lets you know that most of these arguments that somehow Ripple did something wrong or there's something wrong with XRP have to be fundamentally incorrect through 13 years of pricing data given to us by the market. Additionally, there's never any logic or nothing they say ever makes sense in terms of why you might not want to hold XRP. It's all these very emotional arguments like XRP is bad or Ripple is evil or XRP is centralized. But none of it ever comes with any proof, or none of it ever comes with any good argument to why they're correct. And this reminds me of something actually extremely bullish in my opinion, which was the very early Tesla days. I remember when I was first buying into Tesla between the years of 2016 and 2020, everyone hated Tesla. Tesla was going bankrupt. Elon Musk is an idiot. He doesn't know how to run a company, all these things. And no one was saying these things from any kind of technology perspective or any kind of fundamental perspective on their business. It was all these very emotional arguments. And funny enough, it was the same thing I faced when I first got into Bitcoin in the very early days. It's like everyone I talked to in the traditional financial system was like, oh, well, this thing is imaginary. It's stupid. Like they couldn't conceptualize any of the ideas. And for me, it was always so obvious these people were wrong because they weren't actually bringing any good counter arguments to why the technology had something wrong with it. Instead, it was all these emotional arguments on why they didn't quite understand it or why they didn't like it because of their own lack of ability to actually conceptualize the investment itself. That is a lot of what you get into when you talk about these when you talk to these Bitcoiners about XRP. It's not that they actually think something's wrong with it. It's not that they actually know something that we should be aware of. No, it's just all one big emotional argument. It's like one big, oh, well, I just don't like it. And to me, that's fine. But if you're going to invest based off your own emotions, that's your own prerogative. It clearly hasn't shown up in the returns of XRP. That's why it's been outperforming Bitcoin. And clearly, the vast majority of the market is starting not to agree with that perspective. This is very important, and I highlighted on my channel the other day. Right now, for the first time ever, we are seeing search queries for XRP actually outperforming Bitcoin. Now, this is shocking data. XRP's in the red right here, Bitcoin's in the blue, because this is something that has never taken place before. This is like literally the first time in a long, long time, and I shouldn't have said that. We did see it briefly in 2024, but very recently, since early 2024 in December, when Trump got elected, right, and we saw a lot of new people coming into the market, this is the first time in history we have seen people more interested in XRP than Bitcoin. And the reason is because not everyone subscribes to these emotional arguments made by Bitcoiners in the early days. These emotional arguments are really suited in some weird hatred for XRP. You see very similar things in terms of the hatred for a lot of things, right? Like the hatred for Trump. People just get very emotional about certain things for one reason or another. But from my experience, investing in those things have always been very, very, very positive outcomes for the most part, whether it was Tesla, Palantir, Nvidia, Facebook, right? Amazon, like all these things that no one could wrap their head around, and they got very emotional about it, end up being very, very fruitful investments because the vast majority of people can't wrap their head around the fundamental reason why the smaller majority of people have been correct about the fundamentals of the technology. And once you get past of that early group of disgruntled people who just don't like it, it's all the big money who then says, okay, well, I don't care that they don't like it. This makes sense, and it's something that I want to put my money into. The case for XRP is simple. The fundamental problem that all these banking and financial institutions already have, moving money, it's slow, it's inefficient, and they just haven't really stepped into the market yet the way that a lot of people are hoping they will. I think that's going to happen. But they're not going to look at this market from the same emotional perspective that these Bitcoin maximalists do, right? These people who are all bent out of shape about the mention of XRP. It doesn't really make any sense. And new people coming into the market, it won't make any sense to them either. They're simply not going to care. They're going to have a different ethos. And in my opinion, their ethos is clearly going to align with the fact that they want to invest in something that makes sense to them logically. From my perspective, I've never talked to a large corporate buyer or some very wealthy individual who wasn't trying to invest in something that made logical sense to them. That comes from monetary systems. That comes from financial power. That comes from movement of money. These are core concepts to high net worth people and these financial institutions, not things like decentralized money, not things like mining cryptocurrency, not things like token issuance, right? These are things that don't really matter in these groups of people. They're looking for an investment that makes sense. When they go invest in the new big startup or get involved in a venture capital deal, they're not asking about decentralization, or they're not asking about what is the share distribution, right? What they're focused on is, what are you building? How is this useful? How is it going to be important? And this is the same line of thinking that we have in the XRP community. So I think it's very logical to think that as these people get involved in this new paradigm, this new asset class, they're not going to completely change the way they think when they evaluate these investments. Instead, they're going to go to what's worked best for them in the past, which is what makes sense logically, what's going to be used, what's going to have a long-lasting impact on society. And that is always going to stem from the fundamental premise of utility. We're seeing these fundamental shifts in the market right now. And all the Bitcoiners can do is act emotionally to these different arguments. And that's the most bullish part. There's no logic on their side. There's no, oh, yeah, I don't have an answer to that argument. You might be right, right? This is a problem with XRP. That's never what it is. And I'm happy to address it if it exists, but I'm yet to see it. And that's what I'm looking for. And that's why I always argue from the emotional perspective. It's all they have. There's nothing more that they have than FUD. There's nothing more that they have than, just trust me, man, this thing is something you don't want to touch. It's the best they can do because there's no actual facts or fundamentals on their side. Now, if we take a look at the XRP price chart right now, we can see that the XRP price chart is actually breaking up, closing down this sell-off we had earlier this week. I talked about earlier, in the week, I made a video. I said, look, like, you really can't be getting washed out by stuff like this. This is an obvious shakeout. And it looks like XRP right now is reclosing this gap, moving back upwards. It looks like a large institution took some profits, shook some people out, and we're back on our way. Guys, we are watching a fundamental shift in this market where we're getting larger and larger players who are going to be eating up larger amounts of XRP in a way we've never really seen in the market prior to this. This is going to cause a level of inflows we've never seen before. Are we going to have hiccups along the way, sell-offs, small crashes? Yes. But I think we're in a brand new paradigm when it comes to the long-term build out of this market. I'm of the fundamental belief that the 4-year cycle is gone. And what we're going to see is large amounts of capital inflow over extended periods of time where big recessions or depressions are obviously going to shake up in the market. In the same exact way that banking stocks were hit in a multi-decade recession from the 2008 crisis, but Apple was higher 2 years later, I really think that's the place we are with XRP right now. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this update. And for now, Mickle out.